Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech square off in the Birmingham Bowl. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Commodores and the Yellow Jackets. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. The following brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. That's prizepicks.com, promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. The Vanderbilt Commodores and Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets square off in the Birmingham Bowl down in Birmingham, Alabama. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips, and helping me do so, my good friend Dave Shumate joins me once again. Dave, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time and excited to break down this Birmingham Bowl matchup with you.
Yeah, I know. I'm fired up about this. This one's up there with that South Carolina-Illinois matchup for me. There's some motivation for both these teams coming in. Two really just tough-ass teams. And sorry for my language on here, but like you got a warrior in Haynes King, you got a warrior in Diego Pavia. We don't have to talk about kind of what's going on with them all year. Both those guys have willed their teams to wins down the stretch. I think both these teams, Brent Key and Clark Lee, who won SEC Coach of the Year, want to finish the season strong here. There's a lot to be played for. There's really not a lot going on from a football perspective in Birmingham anymore, really, since Alabama and Auburn stopped playing there and they moved the SEC championship game. Sorry, UAB fans and Birmingham Stallion fans. But this is one of the bigger, I think, bowl games that has a ton of meaning to them. And as we talk about all the time with these bowl games, CP, motivation is key in today's era of who kind of goes in and can have success in these bowl game type settings.
Yeah, motivation factor is huge in these bowl games, Dave. I think you really have to read between the lines and figure out, for some teams, a certain bowl game is a great achievement and they're fired up to be there. And for others, they'd rather be anywhere else, right? And I think that's the case with some of these SEC bowl games, but not this one. I think both Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech excited at the opportunity to end what were really successful seasons, I think, for both on a positive note. Again, this game taking place Friday, December the 27th at 2:30 p.m. Central, will be aired on ESPN. Again, they're playing it down in Birmingham, Alabama at Protective Stadium. Vandy is a 2.5-point underdog. The over-under, Dave, set at 51.5. Georgia Tech leads the all-time series 20-15-3. And the last meeting, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets won in 2016 by a final score of 38-7. Dave, on the point you just made as we dive in this game, I do want to start there. Again, some of these other bowl games, if you will, SEC or not, you have to look at motivation factor, who wants to be there, who doesn't, how much does the game really matter. I think that's why when you look at the SEC bowl game slate, Dave, this is one of the most, I don't even know if it's an underrated matchup. I just think it's one of the best matchups we've got on the bowl game slate. When you think about the dynamic of these two teams, I think both teams are really upstart clubs. Obviously, we know about Vanderbilt, what they did this year, beating Alabama, beating Auburn, getting to a bowl game. They've got a shot at their first winning season when it's all said and done for the first time since 2013 there in Nashville. Then you look at Georgia Tech, finished 7-5, almost 8-4, almost upset the Georgia Bulldogs and really shook up the college football playoff race. They lost that game in 8 overtimes there in Athens. So, Dave, like you mentioned, the motivation factor will be high, a lot on the line. And that should lead, I think, to one of the more entertaining games of bowl season when you have two sides that feel like they've got a lot to play for.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really genuinely do. I mean, this isn't just us hyping this up. I think these two teams outside of South Carolina and in Illinois, out of the SEC non-CFP games, really, I think both these teams will be legitimate game planning for this. Like it is, again, Vanderbilt doesn't want to have a losing record. I mean, again, as good as the season as they have, it would just be another losing record for Clark Lee overall. I think that's a big motivating factor. And Brent Key, he's a Georgia Tech guy, has a lot of pride in his alma mater. They want to finish it the right way. And man, I think we got two really exciting. This game screams down to the wire to me between these two teams. Maybe I'm wrong in that. We'll get to the predictions here in a bit, but it'll be back and forth seeing these body blows thrown between these two quarterbacks and Diego Pavia and Haynes King.
Yeah, if you're tuning into this one, Dave, that's exactly what you're watching for. Haynes King against Diego Pavia. Dave, here's a crazy stat for you. And you talk about just how exciting are these quarterbacks and how important are they to each of these teams. And Dave, how refreshing is it that neither of these guys are opting out? We're getting both of them. We're going to get two of the best, most exciting signal callers in the country squaring off. Haynes King, Dave, has accounted for 42% of his team's rushing and passing yards.
Mm-hmm.
Diego Pavia has accounted for 63% of Vanderbilt's rushing and passing yards. There's some games, Dave, we oversimplify and say it's going to be a battle of the quarterbacks. Whichever quarterback plays better is the one that's going to win. I don't think that's an accurate statement when you look at this game. When you think about how much these two quarterbacks mean to each of their respective teams, I think this is one you grab the popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy, because it's going to be a show put on by both of these signal callers in this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, overall here, both these teams coming back. Both had two really good wins. Vanderbilt, Alabama, obviously a couple other wins for Vanderbilt. Georgia Tech getting the big win over Miami. They both had some really close losses against good teams too. So it's two teams really wanting to finish the year strong. And to my knowledge, not really. Obviously we got Eric Singleton who's sitting there and Corey Robinson, the offensive lineman for Georgia Tech. We don't have a lot of real opt-outs though in this bowl game, honestly. And I think Vanderbilt, I'm sure it's being echoed with Clark. We got two head coaches that both played at the current schools they coach at, which I think is awesome. So I think there is going to be a ton of pride in this game when we're playing in Birmingham.
Who don't want to go to Birmingham for bowl season, right, Dave? The old ham down
there.
They
usually get a pretty crappy bowl selection. This is actually a really good one.
The ham got themselves a high-quality game. Dave, I wonder, this was something we talked about in the season. How much did the time off help Diego Pavia? I thought he was a guy that was obviously, last few weeks, was banged up, right? He powered through it, but was certainly banged up. I just wonder, what does he look like? How does a refreshed Diego Pavia with a few weeks off to mend up, get ready, does he look more so like the Pavia we saw earlier in the season?
Yeah, Chris, and we talked about throughout the season, kind of since DJ Durkin, Auburn's defense coordinator, laid out a little bit of the blueprint, I think, on how to stop it. And even furthermore than that, and you saw Clayton White take it from South Carolina. You saw a couple teams kind of take that. I thought Vanderbilt hit a little bit of a wall down the stretch once they got to that 6th win, trying to get that 7th. Really the beginning of November. But I feel like people kind of started to, hey, that's how we stop it. DJ Durkin, I know it was a loss, but they only gave up 17 points. That's how we stop this. People kind of continue that on. Does Georgia Tech's defensive coordinator, Tyler Santucci, I worked with at Texas A&M, phenomenal background, really a Mike Elko disciple, worked with him at Wake Forest, worked with him at Notre Dame, worked with him at Texas A&M. Then you have who's also up for the Wake Forest job. I don't think he'll get that, but he's in that conversation. I'm sure he's a young cat who wants to establish himself. This is an opportunity. I think people this year against Vanderbilt are kind of being like, this can kind of be a feather in my cap if I can go out there and stop Diego Pavia, because I think the kid has so much juice. But I also think the blueprint's been out there. Let's see if Georgia Tech can go operate that. Because, again, we talk about it. It's weird to talk about because under Paul Johnson, we used to talk about it was a pain in the ass to deal with that triple option in bowl games. Now it's kind of the opposite. Georgia Tech and Buster Faulkner don't run that. But now the spread option that Tim Beckman brought up from New Mexico State, adding the tenacity and the will of Diego Pavia, and it's a total – to prepare for, adding Eli Stowers in the blocking and passing game. It's a tough task. It'd be a tough preparation for Tyler Santucci and that Georgia Tech defense.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cat and mouse game between Buster Faulkner and Clark Lee. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Vanderbilt's defense. Certainly one of the stories within this year, Clark Lee, I think, taking over defensive play calling duties was one of the best moves made in the offseason and certainly led to improved results for that side of the football. I do wonder, too, how does Vanderbilt hold up against that Georgia Tech defensive front, who I thought did a pretty good job, all things considered, against Georgia in that game, in the final game, held them to just right at 100 yards. I know, obviously, it wasn't a banner day defensively when Georgia scores 48, I believe it was, in overtime or whatever the final score was. But you saw flashes there. I do think Vanderbilt offensively, they're obviously going to have to hold up and give some time for Diego Pavia. He's going to improvise, make his own plays, but I think that matchup in the trenches, certainly with Georgia Tech's defensive front, going to be one that's really interesting. This game goes a long way in determining the outcome.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah. So that being said, Dave, again, we got the Birmingham Bowl down at Protective Stadium. Let's go ahead and lock in some score predictions here. I'll go ahead and start, Dave. You said something earlier that I agree with. This is a game with these two quarterbacks and these two teams, right? Motivation factor is going to be key here. Going to go a long way. Both sides are fired up, and I can't wait to watch this game for that exact reason. By the way, Friday, December the 27th, on a side note, if you haven't looked at the schedule, there are 4 SEC bowl games on that day. So I believe this is going to be game number 2. I think Oklahoma Navy is going to kick us off that day. Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, then it'll be Arkansas, Texas Tech, then it'll be A&M, USC to close out the night. So, again, December the 27th, a great day to just find your favorite chair, recliner, couch, put down the remote, and just let it roll because there's going to be a lot of great ball on, including this football game. Dave, again, I think because of the motivation level, I think both sides, these teams somewhat similar, if you will, in regards to the way they want to close out the year. Two exciting quarterbacks. I think what you said earlier, Dave, I think we are destined for a classic in this one. I think this game is going to come down to the wire. And, Dave, I'll just say this. I've rode him all year. I'm not going to stop now, man. I'm picking Diego Pavia and the Vanderbilt Commodores to have one more punch than Georgia Tech. They win this thing at the buzzer, essentially. Give me Vanderbilt 28, Georgia Tech 27, and what I think is going to be one of the thrillers, one of the most exciting games of bowl season when it's all said and done. The Commodores find a way to win this football game and most notably finish with a winning record for the first time since 2013.
Yeah, I'm with you on the close game. I think it's going to be something like a 28-24 type game here. But I'm going to go the opposite of you, CP. I'm going to go Georgia Tech. I like their overall defense a little bit better than Vanderbilt's. And I keep going back to it. I feel like the blueprint's kind of been laid out on how to stop Vanderbilt. I'm sure they'll have some new wrinkles with the time off. But knowing Tyler Santucci, I think he will have his crew ready. Again, we'll have a little bit of the chip on their shoulder off the performance against Georgia, but again, a totally different offense. I don't know. I trust Haynes King in this game. Again, I also trust Diego Pavia, but I think it's going to be one of the better bowl games of the season. Maybe we're both wrong here. That I think the motivation factor for both teams to come in and Georgia Tech try to get that 8th win, Vanderbilt try to get that 7th win. And I think just both these head coaches being alums of both their universities here, there's going to be a lot of pride here. There's not going to be, hey, what am I looking for another coach? As far as I know off the top of my head, I don't think any of the coordinators are moving on to take other jobs. I know Buster Faulkner's name's out there. I mentioned Tyler Santucci with Wake Forest. I don't think he's going to get that head job, but I trust Tyler Santucci more so. I think the blueprint is there the last few weeks, really going back to the Auburn game. I know Vanderbilt won that game, but still only scored 7 points. Just give me Georgia Tech in a real close one. I'm going to go 28-24. For whatever reason, I've picked against Vanderbilt a couple of times this year, more so than you and Cole have, but still love what the Commodores have been doing. I've been screaming at the mountaintop, Clark Lee should be SEC Coach of the Year, which he got. I know some other people are talking about Shane Beamer, which is fair too, but anytime you can get to 6 wins, potentially 7 here for the Commodores, in today's era of college football at Vanderbilt, it's impressive. You should win the SEC Coach of the Year damn near every year for that. But unfortunately, I think in the ham, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets get it done in the 205.
So, guys, do you agree with me or do you agree with Dave? How do you see this one playing out when Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech do battle in the Birmingham Bowl? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.